Graham is the co-founder and director of International Futures Forum, which is a non-profit organisation based in Fife, involved with research and consultancy activities that are funded by business, philanthropy and the public sector. The forum is developing a body of ideas about how to make sense of the complex world around us, taking on real challenges with partners in business, government and communities. Graham Leicester.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike, and thank you everyone for your indulgence of letting me parachute in like this. I'm going to parachute out again pretty quickly as well, so that'll be fine. This is judged as a lightning talk, and I was wondering about that metaphor. Lightning sometimes can be a bright flash of light in the sky that illuminates everything. Suddenly everything is clear, flash of insight, everything becomes wonderfully clear again, and all's fine. It can also be quite dangerous if you encounter it in the right place or in the wrong place, and you end up as a pile of charred ashes on the floor, in which case it is to be avoided. So I advise you to listen to what I've got to say over the next 5 minutes or so with that in mind. You know, if it's useful and illuminating, fine. If it's irrelevant and distracting to your process, please ignore it. Because I haven't been here for the morning, so I can't quite pick up on the energy. I want to talk to you from the perspective of the International Futures Forum, which I helped set up in 2001, with a mission to figure out how to take effective and responsible action in a complex world. So we talk about practical hope and wise initiative, effective and responsible action in a complex world. And part of this is about understanding the complexity of the times. We talk about having to face a real emergency, so the real challenges we face in the world, a conceptual emergency, so trying to make sense of the blooming, buzzing confusion of the world as it changes swiftly around us in order to address those challenges, and an existential emergency. That's a big word, but it basically means how that impacts us as human beings, you know, individually and collectively. What it feels like for nothing to be stable anymore, to be standing on shifting ground, to be living in a world of confusion and instability in which nothing we do seems to work. And the things that we try to make things better either are not effective or seem to make things worse or are brushed out of the water by other bigger trends. We call that the existential emergency, how that leaves us feeling. There's a Harvard psychologist called Robert Kegan who wrote a book in the early 1990s called In Over Our Heads, The Mental Demands of Modern Life. In over our heads. Certainly I feel in over my head most of the time. I know a lot of other people do. That's our diagnosis of the so-called mental health crisis. We're living in a world we don't understand and can't control, and it's tough, and it's affecting all of us. We call these powerful times, and we've looked at my suggestion for the design process here is that we take that into account, that we design for this present moment, this difficult, complex, messy, confusing, perplexing, disruptive present moment. Now, a lot of the work that we've done has been about education. I need some education myself. Wonderful report, another wonderful report from the early 90s. UNESCO set up a commission on educating for the 21st century. They were looking ahead in those days. Here we are in the 21st century. This is the report that they produced. It's called Learning, the Treasure Within. The capacity lies within us. We can thrive in these powerful times. We are human beings. We are part of the natural order. We're part of this complexity. We can be comfortable in it. We can develop the capacity to be that way. And that the Law Commission, I've come back to these 4 pillars of learning. We need to learn how to know, learning to be, learning to do, and learning to live together in the conditions of the 21st century. That's the challenge, and I hope that you'll be rising to it over the course of your design work. I want to talk about innovation as well, a perspective on innovation. We use this 3 horizons model a lot to think about innovation, and systems change or systems shift or building a new model to replace the obsolete old one. I've seen different versions of that on the different tables. It's very simple. It's got 3 lines on a piece of paper, and it suggests the following, that whatever we're thinking about, there's always a dominant pattern, business as usual, the way that things are done today. And as the world changes, it's not working quite as well as it used to. Care experience is maybe not working as well as it used to. The things that we're trying to reimagine and reinvent are not working as well as they used to. However well-intentioned the founders of those systems were, they're not working as well as they used to because the world's changing. And there's a kind of managerial perspective that goes with that way of looking at the system. We've got to keep it going. We cannot let it collapse. It's like the NHS. It's not fit for purpose at the moment, but it's all we've got. We've got to keep it going. And the managerial perspective is to keep it going. And that's a responsible task and one that we mustn't neglect. At the same time, we have dreams of a better system. We have aspirations, we have values, we have beliefs, and we'd love the world to be different. We can imagine and aspire to a very different system that works in tune with our values and our deeper aspirations for the future. That's the third horizon, the future pattern. We can see it already. That green line starts now. We can see it around us. We're building it around us. We live our own lives, partly through our own vision. We can see that already. Be the change you want to see in the world. That's the visionary perspective, as it says, aspiring to a better way. That's the third horizon. There's always a second horizon, the zone of transition, a kind of entrepreneurial spirit. People who are seeing the failings of the existing first horizon system and saying, we can fix that. We can make that better. We can make it faster, cheaper. We can sell something into it. We can improve it, and we want to improve it. We mustn't let it collapse. We have to improve it. And they might be picking up on the way that the world is changing and that there are new opportunities, things that we could do now that we couldn't do 10 years ago. Let's try some of that. There's a kind of entrepreneurial energy in that second horizon. That's another perspective. And the critical thing about this three horizons, and really the only reason why I'm sharing it today, is because it gives me, and I haven't seen any other framework that does this, certainly as easily, it gives me this distinction between sustaining innovation that keeps the old system going, improves it, makes it faster, fitter, better, and transformative innovation that fundamentally changes it to a different system, a different pattern that's fit for the future. This is the difference between a fatter, faster, fitter caterpillar and a butterfly. That's transformation. And you can have transformation. You can design for transformation. Now, I saw that that was in the kind of rubric for this meeting. If we're designing for transformation, it's H2+. We call that second horizon plus innovation that we're trying to do. If you bring all three perspectives together, you're looking at a pattern of change, a landscape of change, a pattern of renewal over time, a dominant system that gives way over time to a new system. We say John Vasconcellos, the California senator, we're fond of quoting, sadly passed away now. He used to say, we've got a twin task. We must be hospice workers for the dying culture and midwives for the new. We've got to do both of these things. They're both part of the innovation pattern. And we can see, we have these three perspectives on the system. A managerial perspective, keep it going. People are relying on this. I'm running out of money. There's quite an anxious tone to the managerial voice. There's an entrepreneurial voice. Why don't we try this? How about that? I saw this over there. When are we going to try this? And there's a visionary voice, usually quite quiet, doesn't come into the conversation much, can easily be crushed. Come back to the real world. That would be lovely, Graham, but that voice is there too. And in your conversations today and tomorrow, listen out for all three. Make sure that all three are in the conversation. I'm going to skip over this one. But basically, there's a negative way. When those three conversations get into those three voices get into the conversation, it doesn't usually go well. The manager will crush the visionary and say, look, motherhood and apple pie are great, but I've got, beds to deliver and, trains to run on time. The entrepreneur will look at the visionary and say, well, at least I'm practical. That's pie in the sky, and so on and so forth. That conversation generally doesn't go well unless we shift it. Because each one can have a positive perspective on the other. I won't go too much further into that, but I have written a book which codifies a lot of the IFF learning about this process of transformative innovation over 15 years. It's called A Guide to Practice and Policy. It's as simple as possible and no simpler. And there is a way of realizing a transformative vision in practice, but it's different from what we usually count as innovation. We've just been working in Fife on health and social care, changing the culture of care. We had a vision, the people in Fife, NHS Fife, had a vision back in 2009. We've been working with them ever since to realize that vision. It doesn't matter what the numbers are. These are actually patients, older people in Fife. You'll see that year on year, we get a kind of 10-fold increase in coverage. The innovator's dream. What people don't know is that we promised after 2 years that there would be 100 people in this program. It was like all innovation programs, it was funded for 1 year, and we said we can't deliver anything a year, but we'll deliver 100 in 2 years. We delivered 6 in the first year, abject failure, 50 in the second year, just embarrassing failure. 500 in the third year, no one ever thought that was possible. 5,000 in the next year, and so on. There is a practice that can realize a transformative vision. Lesson from this slide, it takes time and it will feel like failure. Not only in the middle in that famous quote, but right at the start. And possibly like abject failure. Why did those people go on? Because those 6 people were an embodiment of the culture that they wanted to see in the world. They were the change. That was enough to keep them going. Second lesson, and there are only 2 lessons you'll be glad to hear, because it's nearly coffee time. This is from Michael Quinn Patton, who I didn't know until I saw him at a conference here in Dundee last summer. It was the Transformations Conference. You can tell, he's a grizzled old evaluator of social innovation. He's been around for a while, for decades, and he said, I've been evaluating social innovation projects for 40 years, and I can tell you that the ones that work have isolated themselves from the dominant system in order to give themselves some space to break the rules and be completely different. And they work. And the ones that don't work have failed to do that and get crushed by the existing system that makes unreasonable demands on them or makes it impossible to do the innovative work. He said, from both of these examples, you can draw one conclusion. Projects do not change systems. And when he said that, it really clicked, really clicked. Our answer to that is that patterns change systems, because patterns are systems. It's a pattern of mutually reinforcing activities that changes a system. Eventually a project will be absorbed into a wider pattern. And the obvious place for it to be absorbed is into the dominant system, the H2 minus. This will happen automatically, unless we have an intention to form our own pattern that will start to absorb other projects and invite others to participate. So this is the other thing I think to think about in terms of your projects and the links between them and an transformative innovation program over time. Think about that shift from project to pattern. So we live in powerful times, don't forget it, and powerful times demand transformative innovation. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much indeed, Graham.